Imagine living in a world where a war never ends. The year's 1945. Cities have fallen. Governments have surrendered. Millions of people are trying to rebuild their lives. Families are finally welcoming loved ones home. But deep inside a remote jungle, one soldier has no idea that any of it has happened. For him, the war is still raging. Every sound in the forest could be an enemy. Every airplane overhead is a threat. Every stranger is part of a trap. Days become months, months become years, years become decades. 30 years pass before he finally walks out of the jungle, not because he was captured, not because he was defeated, but because he believed his mission was never over. This is the unbelievable true story of Hiroo Onoda, the Japanese intelligence officer whose loyalty, discipline, and determination turned him into one of the most extraordinary figures in modern military history. His story sounds like fiction, yet every major chapter is supported by historical records. It is a story of war, survival, isolation, and the incredible power of belief. Hiroo Onoda was born in Japan in 1922. As a young man, he grew up during a period when Japan was rapidly expanding its military influence across Asia. Like many young men of his generation, he eventually joined the Imperial Japanese Army. But Onoda was not trained as an ordinary infantry soldier. He attended a military intelligence school where he learned reconnaissance, gathering information, and guerrilla tactics. His instructors emphasized something unusual. They told him that his duty was not to die recklessly. His mission was to survive, observe, and continue gathering intelligence for as long as possible. Those lessons would shape the rest of his life. In December 1944, during the final stages of the Second World War, Onoda received orders to travel to Lubang Island in the Philippines. The island had strategic importance because Allied forces were advancing across the Pacific. His assignment was to disrupt enemy operations, observe military activity, and avoid surrender. According to later accounts, one of his commanding officers instructed him that no matter what happened, he was not to surrender or take his own life. The army would return for him. He believed those words completely. Only weeks after Onoda arrived, Allied forces attacked the island. Japanese defenses collapsed. Many soldiers were killed or captured. Onoda escaped into the mountains with several other soldiers. From that moment, they began living in the jungle. Then history moved on. In August 1945, Japan officially surrendered, bringing the Second World War to an end. Across Asia and the Pacific, fighting stopped. Millions of soldiers laid down their weapons, but Onoda never accepted that the war was over. Aircraft dropped leaflets into the jungle announcing Japan's surrender. Newspapers were scattered from the air. Loudspeakers called into the forests. Family members even sent letters urging isolated soldiers to come home. Onoda examined these messages carefully. Yet he believed they were part of an elaborate Allied deception. His military training had taught him to expect psychological warfare. To him, every leaflet looked too convenient. Every announcement sounded like enemy propaganda. If his commanders had truly ended the mission, he believed they would come personally, so he stayed hidden. Years turned into decades. At first, Onoda lived with 3 fellow soldiers. Together, they survived by adapting to the jungle. They built simple shelters. They collected rainwater. They ate bananas, coconuts, wild plants, and occasionally livestock taken from nearby farms. They repaired clothing instead of replacing it. They carefully maintained their rifles and ammunition. Their discipline remained remarkably strict. Eventually, the group became smaller. One soldier voluntarily surrendered in 1950. The remaining 3 continued living in the jungle. Years later, another member died during an exchange with local authorities. Then another was killed. By the early 1970s, Hiroo Onoda was completely alone. Nearly 30 years had passed since the war ended. The world had changed beyond recognition. Television had become common. Humans had walked on the moon. New generations had grown up knowing nothing of World War II. Yet Onoda still believed he was carrying out his original mission. Then in 1974, a young Japanese traveler named Norio Suzuki decided to search for him. Unlike previous expeditions, Suzuki approached the mission with patience and respect. Remarkably, he found Onoda. The 2 men spoke peacefully. Suzuki explained that the war had ended nearly 30 years earlier. But Onoda refused to believe him. He insisted he would obey only one person, his commanding officer. That response revealed how deeply Onoda believed in military discipline. For him, Orders could only be canceled by the officer who had issued them. Without that command, his duty remained unchanged. An extraordinary solution followed. Japanese authorities located Onoda's former commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi. By then, Taniguchi had returned to civilian life. He agreed to travel to the Philippines. Standing face to face in the jungle, nearly 3 decades after the war ended, the retired officer formally relieved Hiroo Onoda of his mission. Only then did Onoda accept reality. He saluted. He lowered his weapon, and after almost 30 years he stepped out of the jungle. The world was stunned. Onoda emerged wearing a faded uniform, carrying a rifle that still functioned, along with ammunition, a sword, and other military equipment he had carefully preserved for decades. His discipline amazed many observers. So did the emotional complexity of his story. Some people saw him as a symbol of extraordinary loyalty. Others focused on the tragic consequences of a mission that continued long after the war had ended. Today, historians often present Onoda's story with balance. His survival skills were remarkable. His dedication to duty was extraordinary. At the same time, his experience reminds us how powerful belief, training, and isolation can be. Separated from reliable information for decades, he interpreted every new message through the assumptions formed during wartime. His story is also a lesson about the human mind. What happens when a person spends years holding on to one mission, one purpose, and one understanding of the world? How difficult is it to accept that everything has changed? Onoda eventually returned to Japan, where he was welcomed by many people. Later, he shared his experiences through books and interviews. He spoke about survival, discipline, and the psychological challenges of living in isolation. He eventually spent part of his life in Brazil before later returning to Japan. When Hiroo Onoda died in 2014, he left behind one of the most remarkable survival stories in modern history. His life reminds us that wars do not always end for everyone at the same moment. Sometimes the final chapter continues long after the last battle. Deep inside a quiet jungle, one soldier remained faithful to orders given in 1944. While the world transformed around him, he stayed committed to a mission he believed was unfinished. History remembers Hiroo Onoda not because he won a great battle, but because he demonstrated a level of endurance, discipline, and conviction that few people could ever imagine. His story forces us to ask an unforgettable question. If you truly believed the world outside was lying to you, would you have walked out of the jungle, or would you have stayed, waiting for the order that finally came 30 years too late? If you enjoyed this incredible true story from modern history, subscribe to TalvixStories. Here we uncover forgotten heroes, hidden missions, lost civilizations, untold wars, and the remarkable true stories that history almost left behind. Because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are not legends. They really happened.